well, what is it that Hummingbird Haven do? So our entire mission in life is to help support veterans in need. It's just that simple. As a veteran who's been homeless 3 times in my life, I've gone through a lot of the ups and downs that many veterans who are dealing with or not dealing with PTSD may have had to deal with. And so I have a very intimate appreciation and understanding of how life can be when you're living with PTSD, whether it's diagnosed or undiagnosed. So what we want to do is provide access to wraparound services. We want to provide things like retreats for veterans and their loved ones, because the other thing that we found when we began doing research is most of the time the spouse of the person or the loved one of the person living with PTSD, they have what is now known as secondary traumatic stress disorder. And what that means is, by virtue of the fact that we coexist in the same space and you have to deal with my PTSD, there's a chance, if you're not careful, that you can get secondary traumatic stress disorder, which is you start behaving or navigate your behaviors around the other person, which then means you start treating other people the same way. So the defenses that you put in place for yourself because you don't want to get into an argument with your loved one who has PTSD, right. The way you learn to avoid confrontation, all those things begin to become a part of your life. Right. So we saw this as a need. We did a lot of research, and there are not a whole lot of organizations out there that support the veteran and their loved one in this way. And so we want to make sure we do that. So we do access to wraparound services, we do retreats, we are into yoga, meditation. We're providing information to help the veteran and their loved one learn to navigate and to overcome the stigma that's associated with PTSD.
All right, how my experts doing? We are another Brands Experts podcast with my great guest right here, Didosio Habib.
Nice to meet you.
Right, he is the owner of Hummingbird Haven.
Yes.
Right, they are a brand that specializes in PTSD recovery and that field, mental health awareness as well. So we'll let Didosio Habib introduce himself, exactly what the brand does.
Thank you. I'm Didosio Habib. As you know, I'm really co-founder. Hummingbird Haven is the brainchild of my wife. She's lived with me as a veteran who's living with PTSD, who had to learn how to manage living with PTSD. And because of our relationship, she found that there was a need to illuminate the issues around PTSD in relationships. So after years of talking about it, thinking about it, sharing my experience to recovery together, she thought it might be a great idea to form an organization whose purpose is to serve veterans and their loved ones who are dealing with PTSD. As a result, we started Hummingbird Haven approximately 3 years ago. As far as the ideas behind it and what we want to do for the community is concerned, goes. And then from there, we actually formally organized and became an official 501c3 the early part of last year.
All right. And last year, because people are going to watch this into the future. Yes. Last year is 2022.
That's correct. Right? 2022. Okay.
Yes. With the video content, people are going to be watching this into the future, 2025, 2020, 2030. You know, so just to kind of put it all into perspective. Didosio's been in this business for a while now, understands, is a veteran himself. We're going to get into that part of it. Yeah. But it's coming from experience, right? You like to know that the expert actually knows what they're talking about, actually, has experience in that field and things like that. And so it's very important to know, did somebody just start this yesterday? What's going on, right?
Absolutely.
Very important. So if someone's wondering, right, a big question most people have with all brands is, well, kind of like, what does your brand do? I know you explained a lot of that, but if you just get that exact question, what does your brand do exactly?
Sure.
Kind of and what do you do inside of the brand? If you can break
Okay.
those two down.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. Let me start with the latter. My role in the organization is to help support it in any and every way I can. One of my challenges as a person living with PTSD is I have developed a resistance to engaging with the masses. I'm learning to manage it. I've learned to manage it a lot better than I have in the past, but it's an ongoing challenge for myself. So I provide as much support as I can to my wife, whether it be website development, app development, reviewing documentation. I have a background and a degree in business, in entertainment business, so I have a general sense of how business should be formed and operated. And so whatever that might be, I provide that service to her. I also act as the interim chair of the board. We have a great board that we put together, whose purpose is to help guide us as we evolve into a service offering organization. And that leads to the first part of the question, which is, well, what is it that Hummingbird Haven do? So our entire mission in life is to help support veterans in need. It's just that simple. As a veteran who's been homeless 3 times in my life, I've gone through a lot of the ups and downs that many veterans who are dealing with or not dealing with PTSD may have had to deal with. And so I have a very intimate appreciation and understanding of how life can be when you're living with PTSD, whether it's diagnosed or undiagnosed. So what we want to do is provide access to wraparound services. We want to provide things like retreats for veterans and their loved ones, because the other thing that we found when we began doing research is most of the time the spouse of the person or the loved one of the person living with PTSD, they have what is now known as secondary traumatic stress disorder. And what that means is, by virtue of the fact that we coexist in the same space and you have to deal with my PTSD, there's a chance, if you're not careful, that you can get secondary traumatic stress disorder, which is you start behaving or navigate your behaviors around the other person, which then means you start treating other people the same way. So the defenses that you put in place for yourself because you don't want to get into an argument with your loved one who has PTSD, the way you learn to avoid confrontation, all those things begin to become a part of your life.
Right.
So we saw this as a need. We did a lot of research, and there are not a whole lot of organizations out there that support the veteran and their loved one in this way. And so we want to make sure we do that. So we do access to wraparound services. We do retreats. We are into yoga, meditation. We're providing information to help the veteran and their loved one learn to navigate and to overcome the stigma that's associated with PTSD. Unfortunately, it's funny because when I was coming up, and I'm from Savannah, Georgia, deep South, East Coast, I had always heard, if you go talk to someone, something wrong with you, right? Well, that's absolutely true. You need to talk to someone, a professional, to help you sort things out within your own self, because there is something wrong with you. So I've learned that this stigma that's associated with mental health illnesses is completely unfounded. It's backwards. And until we learn to start talking about it, and the good news, of course, nowadays is that there is more conversation around mental health, which is tremendous, sorely needed. And I'm looking forward to seeing more and more of that as we continue to evolve as a society. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, at a very high level, what we're doing to try and help veterans and their loved ones. The other thing that we do is I get calls on a regular basis from veterans who want to try and understand how to navigate the VA system. Fortunately, I'm able to communicate that to them in such a way that it can help them. I have colleagues who I've talked to a couple of years ago who come back and say, you know what, I appreciate the help because now I went from 20% to 50%, and I'm now able to start really working the system to navigate and have a better life.
For sure. So you broke down a lot of different pieces there.
A lot, yeah.
But if you could give the short answer, right? If somebody's kind of on the go, if they're like, Hummingbird Haven, what do you guys do?
So Hummingbird Haven provides support to veterans and their loved ones who are dealing with PTSD in a way that's not intrusive, but we think that's effective to those families in helping them, most importantly, stay together and develop a healthier relationship.
Okay.
In a nutshell, that's what it's all about.
Okay. That's so important. You know, families deal with so many things when it comes to things like PTSD. So the fact that Hummingbird Haven is there to kind of make sure the family's okay, to not kind of separate you, but more so bring the family up to get through what they're going through together is so important. And I just want to thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
It's so needed. It's so important. And, you know, not many people are doing that. So
yeah, you know, one of the things that that I had to come to terms with, and I always think about this, is value.
Yes.
Right. What do I value in life? What are my values in life?
Right.
And that can be a stark contradiction to living with PTSD.
Right.
Because PTSD attempts to protect you. It's a natural reaction to a very traumatic experience that one experiences, right?
Right.
So PTSD's role is to protect you, which in and of itself is not a bad thing.
Right.
The problem is that protection also becomes your prison.
Okay.
It keeps you away from the thing that you value. And unless you learn to focus on what you value, you'll get stuck in that prison.
Right.
And you ultimately find yourself all alone, which is where I was in my life.
Right. And that's not what you want.
No. We need to be, to me, the value of any community is the strength of its families.
Absolutely.
They're the cornerstone for everything that is great that comes from any community.
Yes.
So if we don't have strong families as the core of our communities, we don't have communities that are as strong as they could be.
Absolutely.
And so we want to help by acknowledging that PTSD affects both the veteran and their loved ones. And let's look at what we can do to help build that up.
That's true. That's true. Families, veterans, get through their PTSD. So important because, you know, a lot of people think like when you go to the VA, it's just you.
Right.
But it's not you. You're going for your benefits to be healthy for your family. Your family sacrificed when you're on deployment or you're at duty station, things like that. So, you know, and there's people with kids, grandkids, parents that, you know, all deal with these things. So you're actually not just uplifting the veterans, you're uplifting the whole community. So I just want to thank you for that. You know,
it's a pleasure. It's the least I can do. My whole thing, our whole thing is we want to be able to give back to community.
Okay.
We want to help community realize its fullness.
Right.
We don't get caught up in a lot of the negativity, the derogatory, all that. We don't do that. Been there, done that. And you don't gain anything by getting caught up in it. So what we said is, let's identify what some of the problems might be, and then let's figure out what solutions we can come up with to help address those so that we can move beyond those and get to a better place.
That's right. And mental health is one of the really foundational pieces to a community, right?
Yes.
You know, if you look at there's so much things that have happened in communities. You look at, you know, just the different shootings and those kind of things.
Yes.
Well, if mental health was in a better place in the community, and then somebody that's seen this person that was struggling that could, you know, pull them in and say, hey, why do you look at things like that? He's a person just like you are. Kind of open their minds up.
Yes.
You know, because people deal with problems, you know, if you look at what happened in Uvalde, Texas, right?
Yes.
The guy was, 18 years old, a lot of life to live, and just because of, you know, some bullying, some things that should have never happened, he turned that into a global tragedy.
Yeah.
And so with what you guys are doing, guys are creating these spaces for conversation, for mental health, for the resources in community, and that it's not just going to be local, it's going to be national programs.
Yeah.
Such a blessing because there's veterans all across the United States that need these resources, that are desperate for these resources. And Hummingbird Haven is there to provide these resources.
Thank you.
You know, of course, this foundation out here, Antelope Valley,
right,
Southern California, Lancaster, Palmdale area, but not limited to that.
No, we're not. In fact, the most recent call I got was from a guy in Seattle.
Okay.
So word has gotten that far already about us providing information to help veterans who are facing some type of adversity in their lives.
Right.
I do want to touch on one other thing is we will also be offering access to mental health by mental health professionals as well.
Okay.
Where we're at right now is we're in the process of building towards being able to implement all that.
Okay.
So that when we do deliver it to the community, it's solid and there is legitimate need for it because we know that there is, and we have a good base of people to start working with.
That's powerful. So we look forward to that and meeting these professionals. Kind of when everything gets built up, going on location tours, kind of seeing the facilities, right? As things kind of hit these different milestones and stuff.
Absolutely. And our master plan includes actually being able to provide interim home situations for those in transition. So we have a master plan that's rooted in because a lot of how I think about things is drawn directly from my experiences, which most people do as well. I just choose to try and focus on the positive. Absolutely. I can identify and acknowledge the negative event that occurred in my life, but I want to spend more time looking at resolution, the positive effect. What can we do to make this situation better, to avoid it, so on and so forth. So I take that in how we go about thinking about what we want to do for veterans. Because when I was out there, I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know where help was. I didn't know how to find help. Right. I didn't know the help that I needed.
Right.
And so we figured, why not leverage all the different experiences that I've had and that my wife and I have shared together with regard to my recovery from a really dark place with PTSD, and use that to help other veterans and their loved ones start the journey to realizing their fullness as individuals.
Okay. Extremely powerful. So this is one of the the best parts we love to get to in an interview, right? Because to get to know the expert is very important, right? Because if you think about it, it's kind of like you don't want to leave watching this and wondering where did they come from and kind of like what was their upbringing like, just to kind of get to know them a little bit, right? It's very important. So this piece is kind of get to know them a little bit.
Okay.
Let us know about where you're from, what your upbringing was like, and what got you into this industry.
Okay. All right. So I'm a country boy. I was born in Savannah, Georgia in 1963. Yeah, 1963. I am that old, believe it or not. I'll be 60 this year. This is 2023.
Don't look like it at all.
I appreciate that. I've been fortunate in that regard. I'm the middle child of 5 that my mom had. We grew up in poverty. We moved from Savannah to New York City. I had an uncle who lived there who happened to be a superintendent for a property there, so my mom was able to get into a place. Lived there for a number of years. My mom didn't like it. We moved back down to Savannah, Georgia, where we stayed until I graduated high school. I graduated high school when I was 16.
What high school was this?
This was Richard Arnold High School in Savannah, Georgia.
It's still there?
The building is there. It's since been bought by SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design.
Okay.
And they now do their own little thing there.
Okay.
But the building itself is still there.
Okay.
We still connect with some of my classmates as well, which is really. I graduated in 1980.
Okay.
I tried college early on. It just wasn't for me at that point in time. So after 2 months of college, one of my good friends had just got out of Marine Corps boot camp.
Okay.
And when I saw the change in him, how he was in possession of himself, how he was so self-assured, so confident. He had this thing about him that he could have done anything. Right. And as soon as I saw that, I said, that's what I want.
Okay.
So I joined up.
Okay.
Went to Marine Corps. I enlisted when I was 17, was in by the time I was 18. I was predominantly in Jacksonville, at Newark Air Station in Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Okay.
In 1983, I was in Beirut, Lebanon, when 241 of my brothers were killed by a terrorist bombing.
Sorry to hear that.
It was the most surreal, unbelievable, angering, out of body yet in body experience one could ever imagine. it's still with me today. It will be with me for the rest of my life. I learned that through therapy as well because I was fighting it.
Did you know any of them personally?
I didn't know any of the guys who died personally.
Okay.
But I do. But so the way the Marine Corps works is when you're on a detachment, Marines come in and out of your space on a regular basis.
Right.
So some of the guys who didn't make it came into our space during the time.
Right.
My best friend today was actually in one of the rooms. He was the only person who survived out of his room from that event.
Okay.
A gentleman by the name of Kevin Jiggets. I love him. We share a connection that's the most remarkable thing. From the moment we connected to this, it's just been like I've known him all my life.
Wow.
Because of that experience that we shared. He ended up having both his legs broken, had some head burns, got a purple heart and all that good stuff. Really good person, very caring as well.
You guys still have a relationship?
Absolutely. Wow. I talk to him 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay. What is he doing?
He's an actor now.
Wow.
He's an actor now. He's been doing a lot of different work, horror comedy type of work.
Okay.
So from there, after I got out, that moment changed me. I wasn't aware of the change that had occurred within my own self at that point in time. I just thought, because what was funny was my youngest brother, when I came back from Beirut, he told me I had gone crazy. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Ain't nothing wrong with me. He said, no, something's wrong with you. I said, no, something's wrong with everyone else. They have a problem. They have a problem with me, but there's nothing wrong with me.
Right.
Well, he was true. He was telling the truth. I did have a problem. I was in denial. I lived with undiagnosed PTSD. So I have 3 issues. I have PTSD, I have a mood disorder, and I also have cyclical depression.
Okay.
Right. And so I lived in this state of denial for over 3 decades.
Wow.
For 30 years.
Okay.
And if you look back at my life, you will see there was definitely something going on.
All right.
I was able to, I was up and I was down.
Right.
Up, down, up, down. And finally I hit that low point where it's like, something's got to give here. Something's got to give here. So fortunately for me, I met my wife about 12 years ago.
Okay.
I was living in Oakland at the time. She lived in Philadelphia. And I was doing some work with children whose parents were incarcerated. I was a mentor coordinator. This was a part-time gig that I had taken on in the Bay Area, up in northern Bay Area. And so we had a yearly convention in Kansas City. Okay. And I was told I had to go. So anything happened to my wife, who was in Philadelphia at the time. So we went to the convention, we met, we hit it off, and we haven't stopped talking since.
Wow.
It wasn't until after we got together, because I moved from Oakland then to Philadelphia. It wasn't until after we got together that she realized, and this was interesting because this was the first time in my life a woman who I was with told me what was happening to me.
Right.
Well, she said, something's going on.
Yeah.
You're having these night tremors. You're talking in your sleep. You're doing all this stuff and so on, and you're having all these nightmares of something going. You need to figure that out. Right. And there's one particular time I was having a conversation with one of my military guys in my sleep, and she figured out it was a military thing. She said, you might want to go talk to someone. Right. And of course I resisted, but I also wanted to make sure that she knew that I would do everything I could because I want her to know that I cared about her and I loved the relationship. Right. So I went to the local VA thinking I'm going to go in, do this appointment, and then come back out and say everything's fine, right? 11 years later, I'm still going to the VA. Wow. Present day today, I'm still going, and I'm proud to say that because it has helped me tremendously. Right. There is this myth out there, and I get that sometimes the VA cannot meet everyone's need. I get that. Right, this happened to me as well. But there's this myth out there that the VA is a bad thing. That's the furthest thing from the truth. I've gone to the VA from Philadelphia to California, and what I see is professionals who genuinely care about the health and well-being of veterans. Wow. Unfortunately, the bureaucracy around the VA can sometimes get in the way of that care. Right. But it's not them, it's the system that sustains and supports it. Right. So my thing is go to the VA, take advantage of it. You earned it, you deserve it, it's there for you. And there are a lot of professionals who want to help. Right. For sure. Yeah.
Okay. And so how did you actually get into this industry for mental health?
Sure. So I've always been drawn to wanting to help people.
Okay.
I came to understand who I was back in 2003 when I legally changed my name.
Really?
Yeah. So Dodocio is Latin.
Okay.
Habi is short for the English word habit.
So did you change your whole name?
My whole name.
What was your name before? Do you want to stay away from that?
That'll remain a mystery.
Okay. No, I understand.
I have no fear about it. I have
Right.
nothing to be ashamed of.
Okay.
I had to let him die.
That's okay.
I had to put him down because he was not, and this was my attempt to try and figure out what was going on with me before I started getting treatment for PTSD. So I legally changed my name because that person was not the person who I wanted to be.
Okay.
Nor was that person who I was.
Okay.
But I couldn't get away from him. So first step was to change my name. So Dodocio means to cause to unlearn.
Okay.
To cause to unlearn habits.
Okay.
That's my purpose, my calling in life. Not so much for other people initially as it is for myself. I need to figure out what was going on with me.
Right.
I need to understand, okay, why am I making these decisions? Why am I always so upset? Why is this? And so I committed to figuring that out for myself. And then as a way of the work I do, now try to use messaging and model plans so that other people who are facing the same kinds of challenges or similar challenges, they can then learn that they can do things differently.
Okay.
So I started doing back in, I think it was 2008, when I was living in Oakland. HIV and AIDS was a major problem in Oakland.
Okay.
It was epidemic. It was so bad, right? Especially within the Black community.
Okay.
And so myself and at the time I had just started my journey to become an independent filmmaker.
Right.
So at the time I was approached by another filmmaker, a lady by the name of Abby Ginsburg, because I had done a short documentary on people living with HIV in Oakland. I just took it upon myself to do it.
Right.
She had heard about it, and then she said, well, hey, we got some money to do this project. Gilead Pharmaceutical gave them some money to see what we can do around messaging in HIV and AIDS. And I said, okay, I'm on. So we started doing that work, and come to find out, we didn't know half of what we thought we knew. And so we had to do more research to try and investigate and figure things out.
Right.
And that's when I really began to understand how important it was to engage community when you're trying to serve community. It doesn't do me any good to try to help you if I don't even ask you what you need.
That's true.
It doesn't do me any good to try to help you if I don't ask you how I need to talk to you.
Yes.
Right? That's one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of organizations make, is they don't take the time to figure out how to talk to the person or what the person's real needs are.
Right.
And so we started doing focus groups and so on and so forth. One thing leads to the other, and the next thing you know, so number one, people don't like us to scare them with messages. They like to be brought into the conversation by intelligently addressing the issue.
Wow.
Stuff like that happened around HIV and AIDS. And so we ended up creating an entity called Get Screened Oakland, which was embraced by Mayor Ron Dellums at the time, became a citywide initiative to raise awareness. We brought all of the 501c3 organizations together that provided services to folks in the community. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
So what we're going to get into, right, is this is incredible, right, to hear about all the initiatives, everything that's been going on, everything that they've been doing. Right, kind of leading up to this point, right? But kind of how did they actually get into this industry, right? It's a really incredible piece, so stay tuned in for this. You don't want to miss it. All right, we're still here with Dosi Habib, and he was getting into how he got into the mental health and PTSD industry. He was talking about the initiatives and the programs he was doing out there in Oakland, California, and so we're gonna get back into that piece. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so after the Oakland experience, and I finally met my wife, and we moved to Philadelphia. She was actually working for another organization as well that was providing services to the youth in North Philadelphia, which is a really, really tough neighborhood. A lot of poverty, a lot of crime, always something going on. But we were both called to do work to help our fellow man or our fellow woman. And so as things would happen, I had started film school there, but the program I was in went away, and I had to figure out where I would go next because I thought that that was something that really compelled me. To me, if I can tell a story in my voice that represents our voice, then I've done a service because now I've shed light on an issue from a perspective that other people may not be aware of.
Okay.
Right? And so I knew the value of film, especially after doing the Get Screened Oakland campaign in Oakland.
Okay.
I saw the value of media and messaging to really help get people to move in the right direction, away from the negative towards the positive, the healthy, right?
Okay. Okay.
And so one thing leads to the other, and come to find out that I could go to school here in California.
All right.
I just had to get to California. So we sold everything in Philadelphia. If you couldn't fit in the car, we either sold it, gave it away, or threw it away.
Okay.
Put a plan together, drove cross country. It was a beautiful trip. Best cross country trip I ever had. It took us 8 days. It was just absolutely wonderful.
So you enjoyed the experience. It wasn't just like, let me hear and get here. It was more...
I was a man on a mission.
Oh, there we go.
You know, and my wife was a woman on a mission. Okay. We saw that we had to build a better situation for ourselves.
Yes, yes.
And we had to leverage all the resources we had in order to do that.
Okay.
I was actively involved in the VA during this time. So the VA, I have to get credit for our presence in California, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here.
Okay.
Still may be in Philadelphia or in Georgia, or possibly I would have been having another bad relationship and ended up single again.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
And so we get to California, I do my thing, and during the course of my education, there is this building momentum around doing something for the good of the community I live in.
Okay.
Now, I've lived across many cities. I lived in Mississippi, Atlanta, Savannah, Oakland, Santa Rosa, Castro Valley. I've lived a lot of cities across the United States.
Right.
And I have to say, the support that I found for veterans in the Antelope Valley is unmatched. Wow. I've never been in an area where there's been this much talk and work and effort, genuine effort around helping veterans, as I found here in the Antelope Valley. So because of that, this is my home.
Okay.
I fell in love with Antelope Valley for that reason alone.
Okay.
Right? And so I wanted to make sure that I could do my part to help the veteran community here.
Okay.
And fortunately for me, my wife was all on. In fact, she was probably the motivating factor for that, because I could tell that she's chomping at the bits to do something for us, for the veteran community here. And so this is how we started talking about us having a business entity that provided services to veterans.
Okay.
Hummingbird Haven came up because we have a couple of hummingbirds that come into our backyard.
Okay.
My wife is fascinated by them. She likes the way they can kind of just get in, they can fly backwards, they respond to whatever happens in their environment in order for them to keep moving forward.
Right.
And because of that, she adopted the name Hummingbird Haven, because she wants to create a space where veterans and their loved ones can be just as nifty, just as nimble as the hummingbird with regard to addressing their challenges and overcoming the impact of PTSD in their lives.
Right. Okay.
And that's how we got here.
That's how you got here. Such a strong story of resilience, of so many obstacles that kind of were laid out in front of you that you could have just threw in the towel, say, I'm qualified to do X, Y, or Z. I'm going to do this, stay here, stick it out. But you weren't satisfied with just that. And now you're here in the Antelope Valley, 661 Lancaster, California, right? And you're not just here. You're representing positivity. You're representing veterans that can do something, that can build. You're representing entrepreneurship, which is the most greatest thing you can ever do for yourself. One of the most fulfilling feelings you can ever have. You're representing that. You're embodying that. And for being a veteran, doing all that, I just want to say thank you. Right.
It's an honor. It's an honor. It really is. I'm grateful that we're in a position to be able to do this, to develop this, and give this to the community. I see, for me, it's all about sharing with the rest of the country how great the veteran community is here in Lancaster by doing our part and helping to get the word out.
Right.
I feel like we have the opportunity to create a model of how veteran services organizations can all work together for the benefit of veterans.
Okay.
And that's one reason why we came up with the app that we're just about to launch, which is an app that ultimately it means a veteran in need can get connected to care in less than 3 minutes.
Wow.
That's the bottom line. And it's a real straightforward app. A veteran goes in, they log in. And again, Hummingbird Haven commissioned this effort. The veteran goes in, they put in their email address, their first name, their last name, and then they click enter, right? 2 seconds later, it comes back. What city are you in? And what help do you need? What area do you need help with? And there's a list of different options that we make available to the veteran so that they can select what they need right now. And then once they make that selection, we do a query, and organizations that are a part of the network will then be, that information will then be fed back to the veteran, again, in less than 3 minutes, that they can then use to start getting help right away. So that's the idea behind it. Because again, when I was there, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't even know how to get things done. There was not a common resource for me to use. And because of that, I had many, many weeks of frustration. It links to this notion that the VA doesn't provide services to the community as it should. It all fed into these negative ideas, when the reality is there's a lot of information out there. It's just not easy to get to. The app that Hummingbird Haven commissioned will allow veterans that. Okay. Because not only does it connect you to information around what services might be available, but it also connects you to your local representative, your local supervisor, all of the governmental entities that have an interest in veterans affairs. You have access to that as well in one location. And the goal is, again, to help veterans get access to the services and support that they need right away.
Wow, unbelievable. Whose idea was that?
Mine. Okay. Again, I love technology. Okay. And I wanted to try and streamline access to information for veterans. I want to make it a simple process, an easy to use process, so that, a homeless veteran, and here's the thing. So if you're home, what I've seen is many homeless veterans, they may not have a place to live or a place to sleep in, but they may also have a phone. Or they can go to the library and use a computer. Right. All you got to do is go there and put in avvets.net, create your account. In 3 minutes, you can get access to information that will help you. From your smartphone or anything that's connected to the internet. As long as you can put in a URL, you can get access to care. Okay. And so that was the idea behind it, is to make it simple, to create a model that other communities could replicate and build on, and make it their own as well. But then also to make sure that veterans can get access as quickly as possible. I hate it. There were many days I went hungry because I didn't know what to do. Right. I guess I can say my desire to live was stronger than my desire to quit, because there were times when I was at the point where, maybe this life ain't for me. I've been there. But fortunately, I found something greater to propel me forward and keep me going.
Wow. Unbelievable. So thank you for creating that, Vet to Need That. Technology is incredible. Everything's done through an app in today's world. Yeah. Especially on these phones, it's really incredible. So
thank you.
What we're going to get into next is the history of the expert, right? And one of the most important pieces that we love to know is that, what were people's mentors, because a lot of times in life, there's a lot of things you can't do yourself, right? Don't get that confused. But there's also a lot of things you can't do by yourself, right? If you have a phone, if someone, turns off the cell phone tower, it's going to be hard for you to make that phone call. Yeah. So you need the experts that are running the cell phone towers to make sure those are powered and communicating with other towers and other technologies to make sure that you can receive data, that you can get your phone call received clearly, and things like that. The experts are the ones doing these things, right? But that goes to when you're developing what you're doing, right? Who are these experts that you learn from, right? We call them mentors, right? And so if you can kind of briefly go into who were two of the mentors that helped you become an expert in the mental health industry?
I would say the first person that comes to my mind is a gentleman named Arnold Perkins. He was once the director of, um, of, of the Alameda County Health Department back when we did the Get Screen Oakland initiative.
Okay.
He is an older gentleman. I consider an elder.
Okay.
I have supreme respect for him. His capacity there was to help bring a better solution to the community around many different issues, but from my perspective, was the HIV and AIDS issue.
Okay.
He taught me. He showed me respect.
Right.
It wasn't about, well, where was my pedigree? It was about, you got a great idea, and this is something we need to look into. So how about I connect you to some of my people?
Okay.
Right? And so this was, again, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He and I still talk.
Wow, unbelievable.
It's just, he's an old, like, he's probably maybe close to 80 now.
Okay.
Older gentleman. I have a lot of respect for him. And he just demonstrated to me what it means to be about yourself, to hold yourself with respect and integrity in the face of all types of different threats.
Okay.
Another person who I can think of is a lady, the filmmaker who I mentioned before, Abby Ginsburg.
Okay.
What I got from her was the don't take no for an answer mentality.
Right.
It was amazing to me to watch her in our meetings when we met with various persons when we're trying to raise money for this effort, because we ended up raising about another $150,000 for Get Screen Oakland, in addition to the $50,000 that we got from Gilead.
What a great mentor that was, because it taught you kind of how to go about that, raising capital for projects.
Yes,
because that's gonna be so important with Hummingbird Haven, with raising capital for events, job fairs, entrepreneurship type kind of because without finances, PTSD is going to be a lot worse if you can't put food on the table.
Exactly.
So understanding and getting that know-how how to do that is such a blessing. And what is her name again?
Abby Ginsburg.
Abby Ginsburg. Okay,
Never forget her.
So get into it a little bit more.
So she, what impressed me was we would be having a conversation with a particular individual, and we would say, okay, we need to raise another, let's say, $50,000 to take this thing and do this thing the way it should be done to benefit this community.
Right.
And the person would say, well, I'm sorry, we don't have it. And out of Abby's mouth was, so who do we need to talk to next to make it happen?
Right.
She never took no for an answer. And she did it in such a way that she wasn't pompous or arrogant. She was assured, self-assured.
Wow.
And she was confident that we would get what we needed because the need that we were trying to address was great enough to warrant it.
Okay.
And, she and I spent a lot of time talking about it. I think that project, we worked on it for about a year. Spent a lot of time talking about it. I spent a lot of time just kind of picking up and watching how she operated. And I learned a lot about how to engage with community in that way from her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Abby Ginsburg, yes.
Abby Ginsburg. So what were the two names?
Arnold Perkins.
Arnold Perkins.
And Abby Ginsburg.
And Abby Ginsburg, man. Shout out to them.
There is one other I want to give.
Okay, we get a bonus.
One more. There's a man in my life who was the first man who ever showed me love.
Okay. Real,
genuine, sincere family love.
Okay.
That's my Uncle Frank.
Okay.
My Uncle Frank, I knew, loved me without question. My relationship with my father was, I didn't really know my father kind of thing. I knew him, but I didn't know him. We never really developed a relationship. We never had enough time to do that.
Okay.
But from the very moment I met my Uncle Frank to the moment he died, I knew he loved me.
Sorry to hear that.
I knew he loved me. And for that, I'm forever grateful, because my Uncle Frank would say things to me that would make me think about it for years.
Wow.
He was just that kind of person. He would say something to me, and we would talk about it, and I would, no, Uncle Frank, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not what it. Uncle Frank would go, oh yeah, we'll see. Years later, yeah, Uncle Frank was right.
Wow. Did he have any kids?
He does have children.
Do you have relationships with them?
I do, actually. Sandy, Dee Dee, and Jeanette. Great. They live in New York still.
Okay.
I talked to Sandy most. She and we hit it off really well. I was a little skinny black dude when I was a little boy. Probably weighed, 40, 50 pounds from a little skinny dude. She was a little skinny girl. So when we first moved to New York from Savannah, and I first met her, we just hit it off.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So shout out to Uncle Frank. Right?
Yep.
That
Yeah,
just
Uncle
the
Frank.
impact that you made on Kadosi.
Uncle Frank.
Just the kind of the vision that he helped provide to you with the words.
Yeah.
Right. And that kind of, really pushed and shaped the man you are today.
He gave me a lot to think about. Right. A lot to think about. And I'm forever grateful for that.
Are do you remember just any saying, if you could pick one that's always stuck with you, that kind of, I call it hit different?
Yeah.
Is there any one that you can remember? Just if you could highlight one, what would that one be?
So one day, Uncle Frank's thing, again, we lived in Savannah, Georgia at the time. I was 13, 14 at the time this happened. His thing was he would stand at the side of the road and just wait for someone to come talk to him. That's just what he did. Right. He was a Korean War veteran. He had PTSD as well. Okay. One day I saw him. I came down. We talked, and we were just talking. And I was telling him we was going to church, and he started laughing. Right. What are you talking about, Uncle Frank? What's funny? He said, "You don't know what you're talking about." I said, "What you mean, Uncle Frank?" He said, "The church is in your heart." And I said, No. The church is on blah 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 West Broad Street. That's where the church is. Right. And he said, you just don't get it, do you, son? So what you talking about, Uncle Frank? The church is in your heart. I said, well, can you explain? He said, no, you'll figure it out. And it took me, I don't know, a couple of years to figure it out. I started thinking about it. What does he mean by that, right? And then I finally understood that all the principles, all the goodness, all the well-wish, all that good spiritual stuff, that resides right here. Right. I don't need to go to a building for that because it's right here within me.
Right, we take wherever you go.
And wherever I go. And because of that, I began to understand that I can love anybody. Right. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. We don't have to be the same. We don't have to look the same. We don't even have to have the same thoughts, the same ideologies, politics. None of that matters. I can love anybody because I understand that I can carry this love with me wherever I am. Right. And that's part of what motivates me to realize a better life for myself and for others, is because we're in this together, whether we like it or not.
We are.
And it's in our best interest to put aside our petty bickering and learn to just accept one another and love one another. I don't have to agree with everything you do, but guess what? We don't live in the same house anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So that's Uncle Frank. Wow. And that's the moment. Church is in your heart.
Wow.
Never forget that.
See, one of my mentors is by the name of Myron Golden. All right. I look up to, listen to his stuff pretty much as I can. Yeah. And he has a saying that I always stuck with me whenever, as soon as I heard it. And he said, there's 3 things you need to be successful. You have to have these 3 things. But if you do have them, you can always be successful if they're in the right space. And he calls it mindset, skill set, and tool set. He said, but the first one is the most important. Yes. Because you can be, no matter where you are, if you have the right mindset, you can improve your situation. So once he explained that, I said, wow, unbelievable, because that just changed my whole thought process. Right?
That's let me. So to me, there's one word in the English language that we must learn to regulate. Okay. We can use it, but we must learn to better regulate it. Right. That word is can't. As soon as you say I can't, you just lost.
You just lost. Yeah.
That's mindset. Yeah. That's what he's talking about. That mindset. Yes. The thoughts that we allow. And again, this relates back to PTSD. So the PTSD experience, for those who don't know, there's always a threat. And for me, there's always a sniper someplace because of what happened in Beirut. There's always somebody gonna come in, rush the building, and blow it up. Right. That's just how I think. And because of that, I'm always on edge. Right. And so I had to learn that while those thoughts were here, I had to will a different thought to come into to manifest and focus on that. Right. The connection to these new thoughts is my value. Right. So I had to learn how all these different pieces fit together within my own self so that I don't get caught up in the negative, derogatory mindset that drove me to the dirt. Right. It just ruined my life over and over and over again before I learned to manage my experience in life. Right.
Unbelievable. That's why, just talking about our mentors can just open our minds up to even our sayings, the things that we think about, right? These people. So get around people that are positive, you can learn from, and continue to keep learning from them. Because you can use something someone said, you could hear it when you were 13. and you could be 33, 53, 83, and it could still positively impact your life. So your mentors, like he's presenting them their flowers, right? Present your mentors with their flowers, right? Let them know, how they've helped you and taught you things, because it's just so important, right? To do that, right? To not just, just think about yourself, but think about them and think about, the things that they taught you, and what makes that so important, right? Because it's very important to learn from others, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the reason we met each other was because of the Antelope Valley Chambers of Commerce, right? I met his wife, and she went and told him about me, right? So thank her for that. And we started building a relationship from there. Such a blessing that she did that. And like you say, we're going to eventually have one where she's on the panel with us. Right? Such an incredible moment that's going to be, if we can.
Right? Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
she
okay.
Yeah. I'm looking for. Yeah.
Okay.
She never ceases to amaze me.
Okay. Never. So. Before we get into the next stop, we're going to go into something that we think is very important, right? And that is, who develops the programs for Hummingbird Haven?
That would be Kim, my wife.
Okay.
So she has a background in case management. Again, I referenced the North Philadelphia experience. She worked there for, 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And basically, these were at-risk youth who were caught up in the system or just coming out of the system, but had no bearing, no focus in life, no will to do anything but exist from one moment to the next, or get the next high, whatever the case may be. And their programs were all geared towards helping to get these young folk from where they are to remembering that they once had dreams, and let's start figuring out how you can begin to realize those dreams.
Wow. Okay.
And so because of that, she became very keen, very familiar, very committed to a lot of the youth. Okay. And I think that just carried over into what we do, what we're doing today, which is that she wants to figure out how can we leverage what we have in such a way that it helps open people's eyes, and it gives them something tangible to do to help move them in the right direction. Well, that does make me think one of the things that I learned when I'm in my worst, my lowest spaces, one of the things I learned that I must do in order to not get stuck there is to take an action. Doesn't matter what the action is, but I have to take an action. I have to move a step away from this darkness that's trying to consume me. And because I've learned to do that, and I've done it so many times, now it becomes second nature. I just have to get to the point where I realize, okay, I'm in that spot again. Now I need to figure out what's my action. What do I need to do in order to move away from that darkness into the light?
Absolutely. Okay. So shout out to Kim for developing these programs to kind of, like you said, help you notice. Hold on, I'm stuck. Let me get back right. For her to take the time and just all that she's done for the Dosey. I mean, gosh. And it's not even just even for him, it's for the world. But she took the time to kind of notice certain things, point them out, and communicate it in a way to kind of help the world, which is very, very, very important. So
let me just say this real quick. So one of the things that happened early on in life when people did notice that I had a problem is they would say, pray about it. And that's all well and good, except we know that prayer without works is dead. Right? Faith without works is dead. You need to do something. Kim was the first person who gently, lovingly, intelligently got me to pay attention to me. And then she went even further by saying, I'll come to some of the visits with you. So she actually was in some of my sessions with my doctors because it gave her more insights into what PTSD is. Now, to be honest with you, even today, there's that part of me that doesn't want to believe I have PTSD. It's a constant thing that happens. But I know for sure that I do. And I know for sure that I have the tools to mitigate and change it and take charge of it in my life.
For sure.
I have to give Kim the credit for that because she was the one who gave me that gentle, loving push that got me to take that first step.
Okay. So, such powerful words from the Dosey, getting into his relationship with his wife and how she pushed him and how she is a big part of this too, and you know, such a strong piece of building the brand itself, helping people. So you know, shout out to her for everything that she's doing, and you know, it's going to be a blessing when you guys see her, when you guys hear her words and some of the stuff that she's done and some stuff she's actively doing, and we look forward to that moment.
Yeah. Right. She's a busy lady. I have to make appointments to see her now.
That's what I'm saying. You got to get on the schedule.
I know, right?
You got to get on the schedule.
All right, babes, we off the schedule. It's 7 o'clock. Let's go.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. So what we're going to get into next is something that is very, very important that we do here, and that is the P for V, Pay for Value section, right? It's VIP program for Brands Experts podcast and the Champions Playbook Business Consulting Firm podcast, right? Because we believe that money doesn't make the world go round. Over delivery of value is what makes the world go round, right? Because if all the money were to go away right now, just, you know, because money is a relatively new thing that happened in the last 500 years or so. So before that, there was what was called the barter system. And with that, there's just value. Like who was over, like if you had milk, well, the person with better milk, everybody's going to go over there to get the milk. So they're going to go trade their goats for your milk because your milk is higher quality because you're over delivering value. So we want to break that down, where the value delivery system is, how they do that, and you know, get into the recap of the podcast. It's just so powerful. We do need to get them back on for another episode because so much we didn't even get to about the brand, right? Because, you know, it's just so special, right? And they really over delivering with letting us understand exactly what they do. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to get into that next with the dosing, right? Exactly. So we're back in Brands Experts podcast in the Pay for Value P4V program, right? So this is something very important, right? Because like I broke down a little bit before, the value over delivery is what makes the world go round, right? So we're getting to the value over delivery system. Every brand has this going on, whether they know it or not. We do, you know, mentorship for things like this, of course. So just go to Brands Experts podcast /P4V, see about it. And we're going to get into this for them right now to kind of see exactly how they do this. And then we'll get on some of the follow-up for the podcast, right? So the first part is need, right? If you're in business or have a brand, right, you need to make sure that it's a need, right? If you're developing a spaceship that's going to go to another galaxy, that's great. But at the same time, is that something that's needed? And that may take $1 trillion, and how much of a need is it? So just know, is it a need for your target audience? Is very important. So let's get into need. What big problem does your brand solve?
Well, I would say the biggest problem we solve is giving veterans and their loved ones a space, with a safe space where they can come together and learn to rebuild what might be a damaged relationship. Okay. The question becomes, how much does my marriage mean to me? How much is it worth? Okay. If I can put a price on that, a couple $100 million, it means my life to me. That's what it really means. Okay. The value of my life is consistent with the value of my marriage. Okay. Although it also should include the value of my wife's life as well. There we go. Okay. Right? So the question then becomes, how much do we value our lives together? What's the price on that? And that is the value that we're bringing to helping other families. Okay. Because it's important. I've been in failed relationships before. Right. I know the misery that haunts you sometimes for the rest of your life around it. Yeah. And even though a lot of times we say, oh, we don't really care, we're going to move past it. The truth of the matter is there is some residual within us that we either going to manage or we're not going to manage, but it still exists. That's true. So for me, we need to do everything we can to help build a stronger family unit around that have been either dealing with or not dealing with PTSD, because again, at the core of every community is the family.
Okay, so it's kind of family health.
Family health.
Okay, family health, right? And it's such a big problem because a lot of divorces and bad relationships with kids are happening all the time, and so having that good relationship with family is very important. Okay,
absolutely.
So let's get into the next part of the value over delivery system, and that is trust, right? Without trust, it's going to be really hard to do anything, right?
Right.
So how does your brand build trust with your clients?
Well, because again, it's about there's two ways we do that. The primary way is about saying what we're going to do and then doing it.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
The other way we're doing is we're implementing solutions that are free to veterans.
Okay.
Doesn't cost a veteran a single penny to utilize the service that we're developing,
Okay.
Especially with regard to the web app that we've created,
Okay.
because it doesn't cost a veteran a penny. Right. So once we're able to demonstrate to the community, to the veteran serving organizations, that we are able to help them build a stronger community by meeting the needs of a veteran right here, right now, we now are building this trust in the community to help us take it even stronger, or take it even higher.
Okay. So, by the program that you guys are creating, that's going to show like, hey, this works for me. This worked for these other people.
Exactly.
And, that word of mouth is so important.
Exactly.
And you can see the result. Like, wow, this person has changed.
Yeah.
The trust.
And the other thing I would add to that is that, in our discussions with certain leaders in the community, in the nonprofit and political space, it's become clear to us that there is a genuine need for at the very least, for the application that we've developed, right?
Okay, yes.
There's a genuine need for it. So the question then becomes, okay, if there's a genuine need for it, the issue becomes, I should say, we must deliver on that need. Absolutely. And the app itself will deliver on that need.
For sure. Okay. Let's get into the next piece. Next, we'll get into one of the final areas, right, of the value over delivery system, and that is speed. How does your brand deliver value with speed?
Oh, that's a good one. So I'll give you an example.
And I want to say something too before you get into it. Because why speed is so important? Because a lot of different brands say they can help you, but you're there, and then you're 4 years later, like, I thought this was going to be. They told me 90 days. This is almost, closer to 9 years. What are we doing here?
Right.
But if they can kind of have a system, like you said, with the app that can connect people in 3 minutes, 1 to 3 minutes, you're getting connected to resources. You were already highlighting speed kind of organically. Right?
Yeah.
So how are you guys doing that?
So I'll give you an example. Once my wife first mentioned to me that I should go talk to someone, it took me about, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 hours just to figure out where that someone might be. And then after I made the call, I had to make sure that it was the right person. Okay. And then after I figured out it was the right person, I had to find out if they were accepting new clients.
Wow.
So after she mentioned that to me, it took me probably, I'd say within 24 hours, I was able to at least know that this is a person I can go to. Okay. But then I had to make an appointment, which took another 2 weeks. All right, so we're looking at about 3 weeks' time to get to a place where I can talk to someone who was vetted and is able to receive new clients, right?
Okay, right.
So with the app that we've created, because organizations have to sign up and become members of the network, they are self-qualifying themselves. Right. In other words, they're saying, these are the services that we offer to veterans. We offer these services right now. We're looking to provide these services to more veterans. So when a veteran comes in and let's say they're looking for,
no, you're good. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
So when a veteran goes onto the system and they're looking for, let's say, help with, let's just say, rental assistance. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm. The companies that are fed back to them once they make their query are companies that have already stated that they provide that service and that they're currently providing that service to new veterans. Right. So within a scan of 3 minutes, you got a phone number and an email address of an organization that can help you right now.
Wow.
Based on your query and based on the city that you're making the query in within the Antelope Valley region, that can help you right now. And so as a result, something that took me 2-3 weeks to happen, you can get a solid hit from an organization in 3 minutes.
Wow.
That's a time saving that's exponential with regard to how people normally do it. And of course, because we don't really know what to do, there's not a lot of information out there. So we've actually made it so that if you wanted to say you're having a problem with the VA and you need to figure out who your local congressperson is or your local senator is, we now have included that as an option available for people as well, where you just click on a link you put in your address, and now you get your local congressperson's information that you can then reach out to, or your local board of supervisor person you can reach out to right away to try and bring your case to their attention to get their support. So in a single location, we've tried to eliminate as many of the obstacles and barriers to moving forward that veterans face, because we've done it ourselves. This was the life I lived. These are things I had to research. And that's the other piece is, how much time does it take to research vet and make sure that this is the right person? Well, we've already done it for the veterans so that they have resources they can use that are appropriate for them and they can use right away.
Unbelievable. 3 minutes. We're changing the world in 3 minutes. I mean, 3 minutes you're getting connected with your congressman. 3 minutes you're, solving problems. 3 minutes. So, I mean, they are executing over the value over delivery system, right? With, one of the pieces to our pay for value VIP program, right, that we have, right? And, they already are doing that in their business. And so why it's so important for us to get into this is because you have to remember that everybody will tell you that if you don't have money, you can't do anything. Well, you can start to, it doesn't take money for you to think about a need. It doesn't take you money to start to develop trust. It doesn't make you money. It doesn't take money for you to start to develop results for people. It doesn't take money for you to start to, bring speed. And from there, then you can start to create your income sources because you're executing the value over delivery system. But there's one more piece of it. We're going to provide a bonus for everybody, and that's their value over delivery. How does Hummingbird Haven over deliver to you guys as clients? What is in you guys when you guys say, hey, we're going to make sure that we go above and beyond? How is that done?
Well, that's done in real time, because I'll give you an example of the gentleman who called me from Seattle.
Okay.
Now, we're focused. Well, Hummingbird Haven is a California corporation.
Okay.
501c3. We set up operation in California. We have no allegiance or no obligation to provide any information or support to anybody outside of the state.
Right now.
Right now.
Okay.
Right. Okay. But when I get the call and someone is inquiring about what can they do, it doesn't matter where you're calling from. If you are a veteran, my intent is to provide whatever information I can to help you.
Okay.
So the gentleman called me from Seattle, and at that point I can choose not local, can't deal with him, or I can choose this is a veteran in need, I need help. Okay.
For sure. So it's very important. We're going to put one of these pieces on the podcast. The rest is going to be in our VIP Brands Experts Podcast Club area. So, we're going to let Hummingbird Haven pick which one they want in the podcast, kind of, make sure that you hear, and then, lead you to the rest of them. So if you want to put one in there that we want to make sure we're leaving the podcast, what would it be? The need, the trust, the results, the speed, or you guys over delivery?
I would go with speed.
Speed?
Because that's most important. Look, when you are hungry, I'm sorry, but I ain't even sorry about it. But if I'm hungry, if I haven't eaten in 2 days or a day, or even maybe since this morning, and it's now 9 p.m., I don't want to wait until tomorrow to eat.
I'm hungry.
I'm hungry right here, right now. I have a legitimate and genuine need and a big need right now. So for me, when we can meet that need right here, right now, or in less than 3 minutes, now we've done something that's worthwhile for the veteran and for the community at large, because one less troubled veteran is one more positive citizen in the community.
For sure. So we're going to highlight speed in the value over delivery system. So make sure you check out the podcast. Make sure if you want to catch all of them, you go to Brands Experts Podcast /club, join the club, and see how great organizations like Hummingbird Haven are doing exactly what they're doing, right? So we're going to do a little bit of follow-up on the podcast. It's always good to know kind of how they feel about what they're doing. They're going to be doing, of course, more podcasts in the future. But, of course, did this help them? How they feel about it? Are they coming back on? These kind of questions that the community needs to know. So as you see them, are you going to be looking forward to seeing them in the future episodes? Is it something that they're going to, look to go in a different direction? So we're definitely going to hit on that. We're kind of pressed for time, so we're going to get the short answer.
Okay, sure.
But future episodes, we want to get the long answer.
Okay,
right?
fair enough.
If that's okay.
That's fine.
All right. So what did you enjoy about being on this podcast?
I think what I enjoy most is just the natural flow of information. Oftentimes, when you're talking to people, they don't quite understand how important all the pieces are to the story you might be telling or to the information you might be presenting.
Yes.
And so they try and kind of pigeonhole you or limit it to just this. One of the things that I thought was really great about this was the fact that we just had a conversation. Two people talking about something that they both were concerned about.
Right.
And that's always a good thing because it leads to more information, a greater, more authentic presentation, and it just helps everyone know what they need to know.
For sure. And thank you for that. Thank you that you feel like it flowed. I felt like it flowed, and it just comfortable. Like you said, we're just talking.
Yeah,
right?
That's it.
Nothing crazy, nothing negative.
Yeah.
I just want to know exactly what you guys are doing and why you guys are experts. And I truly, after learning about your experience, who you are, where you came from, your experience in the military, how you not just help veterans, so unique about your journey, your experience, you actually help people going through other issues as well. So just learning all that is really incredible.
Thank you.
Yes. Would you recommend other brand owners and experts inside of brands get on this podcast?
I think it's always a good idea, and I would recommend others. I think it's always a good idea to put the word out about what you're doing. I think one of the reasons why the community doesn't do things is because the community doesn't know that there are things they can do.
There we go. Yeah.
And this particular forum provides a very good way of people to know what's out there, but also to go back later on and reflect on it, because then they can always go back to the episode and, oh, wait a minute, they said this organization was doing that. Let me see if I can find them out again. And so now that just gives us an information source that can help people at any given time once it's out there.
That's true. Okay. Let's see. Do you feel like filming this podcast has made your brand more comfortable with getting on more podcasts in the future?
Every time we have a conversation, to your credit, it doesn't feel like we're having an interview or a podcast. It feels like we're just talking, right?
Yeah.
So it makes me feel more comfortable, which ultimately means for the next one, I'll be more comfortable. I'll have a better sense of the dynamics of these types of conversations. And so to me, it's a good thing, and it does help.
Okay, for sure. Will Hummingbird Haven be getting back on the Brands Experts podcast?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we will.
Okay. All right.
It doesn't matter when.
There we go. Okay. Is there any brand that you recommend that you know of that we most likely don't know that you recommend to come on as a guest?
There is an organization that I've been talking to that I looked into, and they seem to have a lot of different irons in the fire with regard to support that they do for the veteran community.
Okay.
It's Vets for Veterans.
Okay.
They're a nonprofit as well.
Okay.
They are very plugged into the veteran community here. They really are about providing support and assistance to veterans in a lot of different ways.
Right.
I think the community could benefit from knowing what they're doing and what they're about.
Okay. So, I'd like to wrap this up. I'd like to thank Hummingbird Haven for coming on, joining our community of brand experts, right? Very important that they, join another organization. They joined the AV Chamber. Now they've joined this community in Brands Experts podcast, right? Again, thank you again.
It's a pleasure.
And, yes, and let's see. Before we get to the last little piece, anything to look out for from the brand in the next 6 months to a year that we should be on the lookout for?
6 months to a year. My hope is that, and my goal is that the web app that we've created becomes part of the fabric of the community, as well as Hummingbird Haven.
Okay.
And that we are actively engaged in providing services to our veterans, and most importantly, that we are actively engaged in looking forward to where we need to evolve to get even better at it and provide even more services to veterans.
Okay, so some things about exactly what you guys are going to be doing in the future, really important, and of course, we always have to get into where can we find you guys online. Very important.
Sure.
Social medias, websites, info, emails, things like that.
So you can find us online at hummingbirdhaven.org for the main company website. And then to access the application, it's avvets.net. We're currently in beta testing for the app, which means that we're only going to work with a select number of organizations, so that we can kind of kick the tires, get a sense of how organizations perceive the value of the app, and look at what features we need to implement for the next iteration of it. So that's all going on right now. avvets.net, and most importantly, hummingbirdhaven.org.
Okay. And something we like to make sure that anybody watching this has, right, whenever you're watching this, is someone stuck as becoming an expert in what they're doing. They're stuck. They don't have anybody to turn to, or they're looking for a message or a reason to keep going. What would you provide to them in that situation?
I would say first realize that you are an expert in and of yourself because you have lived the life that got you the way you are today. All too often we depend on external forces to move our agendas forward, when in fact we can take that next step if we're willing to see ourselves in a different light. So I would say do that, and then the next thing to do would be to find a good mentor. That can be tricky because finding a good mentor is very hard, but it is possible. A good mentor can help you to see yourself, see things differently, and they can also open doors or expose you to other people who can help you along your journey.
Okay. You broke it down. You need mentors. You're already expert with yourself. Find mentors that can help you turn your expertise into a brand. Because what's so powerful about having a brand is we're here doing this, right? And so let's say we fast forward a year. So he can have a marketing expert in place. I can have a podcast host in place. We make a phone call. You can say, hey, I have a marketing expert that's going to meet with your host at this location, and they're going to go ahead and film. And then we're kind of sitting back and looking at it, kind of remembering like when we did it.
Started,
And because with a brand, you don't have to be there. If you think about so many brands that you purchase from, you may never know the owners or the executives, never meet them. But they're the ones that are benefiting the most off of what you're doing because they built it, and they obviously should be. But that's why I say build a brand, because there's no guarantee that you're going to be in good enough health or whatever happens, and you may be bedridden. But why do you need to struggle financially? Why can't you still achieve big financial goals? Why can't you still achieve whatever change you want to do in the world? That's why creating a brand is so important, and being an expert inside of that brand is the thing that makes that possible. So, I'd like to thank Dodosi for this interview, for sitting down with him, for meeting him,
sorry about that.
You know, and everything that he's doing for the veteran community, the brand community, business community, and just overall making the world a better place. Thank him for that. And like I said, look forward to having him on for a future episode of the Brands Experts podcast. And as they continue to build their brand, to be a part of their journey, this interview is going to be up online and on podcast platforms forever. So be on the lookout for it. And yes, just continue to be great at everything you do, be an expert, and love everything you do. Life is about loving it. All right.
Amen.
All right.
Very good.